There's a lot of conversations right now about the loss of Shebescht's child in an accident that he recently had. And so a lot of people are talking about him, mainly because there was a lot of people that told or that kept saying to him to be careful, that kept saying to him, you're living reckless. So if you don't know Shebesht, this is the guy. He's a musician. He sings this rap, kwaito, pagati type of music that a lot of young people are into. And so he recently got into an accident, and that accident actually ended up with his child passing and also himself being involved in that accident. And so his child, the one I showed you a picture of a little bit earlier on, has passed away because of this accident. Now, this kind of brings back a certain line of subject, because after the child had passed, there's all these conversations about the advice that people used to give him about, you drinking and driving. This is not good. You this violent, wanna be brave, wanna be strong personality that you keep portraying. It's no good. It's of no value. Value yourself, value your life, basically. And so now the combination of, and he used to say his answer to all of that was that I'm drinking booze that I bought with my own money in my own car. And so what can you tell me? And you kind of feel sorry for him now. Reflection is a very difficult thing. When you have to reflect back at saying something like that, that actually makes you lose something of such a high value, like working for your child and all that kind of stuff. It's just a heartbreaking thing. I can only imagine what he's going through. Now, there's all these other conspiracy videos that are out there. I'm not here to talk about any of that stuff. People who are making those. I saw Sangoma saying this what. I'm not. I don't want to talk about that. I wanted to talk about this particular subject alongside the Shebeskt story. Shebeskt is a criminal, was arrested, faked his own death, escaped, and the people that helped him were also then arrested because of this entire thing, including the woman that was helping him when he was out. So they tried to run away from the country. They got extradited back. Now he's going through his entire court case stuff. So recently he had this speech, and this was kind of like the picture that was taken from that day. When he came out, he was complaining, I've not been given the Bill of Rights and the whole nine jazz. And so I wanted to put these two subjects alongside, because loss, we deal with loss a certain way. And so in this case, with Shebeskt's story, it's loss of freedom. Whereas with Shebeskt, it's the loss of his child. And so I thought, let's have a conversation about how then do we live going forward, looking at this type of losses, that we lose something of value that we might not see its value until it's no longer there for us. It's the Reality Show. We do daily Christian commentary videos. And so before I go any further, I want to read 1 Corinthians chapter number 10, verse number 30 to 31. It kind of gives the context around this. It says, if I partake in a meal with thankfulness, why am I denounced because of that for which I give thanks, And so it's kind of bringing this context around intake, whatnot, and how other people might see that whole thing, right? It says, so whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do it all to the glory of God. Whether it be our relationships with people, our work with people, our dedication to others, and all these things, we do all of these things in the name of, it's a reflection basically of our relationship with God. This is whatever we do. This is whatever, whether we are eating or thinking. Why is this important? Because if this is the bedrock of our life, then if this becomes the foundation, that God being king over our life reflects in all these other relationships, it will dictate for us how we take people's advice when they give us. You see, a person like Thabo Bester, you can say, right? A person like Thabo Bester, when he was free out here, able to walk like every one of us, it had no value for him. It didn't ring out any particular value for him. And so he looked at it with a very low price. He looked at that and he just kind of like, tossed it about, went about, did whatever he did, whichever way he did. The same way you could say about Shebesht. Before the loss of his child, when they warned him, stop driving when you're drinking, stop behaving this way, stop creating this personality of I'm hard, because it might cost you. So when he finally loses someone that dear, like a child, how hard hitting is that? At that point, there's nothing we can say to you. There is no advice we can give you. It took an experience for you to know the value of all of these things. And so when you read this verse, whatever you do, whether you are eating, drinking, whatever you do it all to the glory of God. All of it to the glory of God. And then he continues on, he says, do not become a stumbling block, whether to Jews or to Gentiles. So basically, there are people that have a reflection of faith, right? So do not hinder truth being clear before someone's eyes. So allow truth to be clear in someone. So by you taking advice of someone, you are able to change your character to a standard where people are able to see a life worth living, or a life worthy towards that glory that God reflects towards men. And so someone says, oh my goodness, this person was like this and now he's better, he's like this. You can see like a direct correlation with the advice that they were given and how they live their life, and it is able to reflect back into your life as well. So you are not a hindrance towards truth being depicted or being shown. It brings me to my second scripture, which is 1 Peter chapter number 4. It says, therefore, seeing Christ suffered in his body, arm yourself with the same resolve, because anyone who has suffered in this body is done with sin. Consequently, he does not live out his remaining time on earth for human passions, but for God's will. So once we have been given advice that leads us to truth, advice that leads us to life. Hey man, value yourself. Hey man, value your life. Stop being destructive. Stop being this. Stop being this. So once we've heard all these advices that structure us towards a good thingy, we are able not only to reflect the good of that advice to other people, right? But subsequently, we are able to reflect that life towards spiritual, to a spiritual benefit, not to human desire. You see the ending of that verse number 2 there. It's quite an interesting one. So we live our life very different. We live patterned a little bit different when we live away from human passions. So these things that we think, when Thabo Bester was chasing whatever he was chasing, he pursued human passions. When Shebesht was busy living whatever success he had or he's enjoying right now, whether it be gigs or music or whatever, you see, whatever success he had there, it evolved around human passions. So as a matter of fact, it consumes one to pride. It consumes one to pride. I'm here because I've worked hard. And so you get consumed by that instead of growing to a place where it reflects God's journey in your life. It only reflects self. And when you reflect self, when you reflect human passions, you live to the flesh. So there is no advice you would hear that advances your life. It's only destructive and whatnot and stuff. But if you actually go on with that verse, it says, for you have spent enough time in the past carrying out the same desires of the Gentiles, living in debauchery, lust, drunkenness. And then, so basically, he speaks all these things that were very detestable towards the character that God would have you live, that depicts that glory. So you see, basically, it comes back to what you hear Black Coffee speaking about. He says, man is made for the worship of God. And so if we live to human desires, we don't hear godly advice. We don't hear advice that's meant to structure us, so we cannot pattern our life in such a way. And so what ends up happening is that we walk in human passions, as you may put it. We walk on in human passion away from God's will. And as we do that, it causes us to fall into drunkenness and debaucherous lifestyles and desires of all forms and all lust. That's where destruction lies. That's where Thabo Besta's destruction was. That's where Shebest's destructive lifestyle points him towards. You see, so apart from all the things that everybody makes videos about concerning this particular subject, at the end of the day, if we, me, you, and everybody around us, if we continue pursuing ourselves towards human passions, we create a destructive lifestyle. You'll be a Thabo Besta sitting in jail asking us for the Bill of Rights, asking people to give you the death penalty. Because when we pattern our life according to God, there is purpose in that life. When we are given advice, we are able to hear it. We are able to reflect back into what is being said, and then we work on that, right? And so we get better with that. But when we don't, we suffer loss, and living forward, we live in grief. So that's why there are people that just live in grief. Like, you can tell this person is living in grief. It's almost like their life doesn't pivot, there's no change. And by change, I don't mean like they're doing something else. No, but you can tell when a person is maturing or towards growth, because they come to a point where they care about other things. You get me? Not there caring how another person sees me. I'm caring about being a reflection of what God has assigned me to be. You're out there trying to be the rich guy. You're trying to reflect that. And so we live as a depiction of grief. So our life going forward depicts grief. Yesterday we were talking about suffering wrong. If you did watch that video, it's very important. We are very careful about those things, and we walk in such a manner. By hearing people's advice, sometimes it reflects back. You see, the glory of God is reflected back because, the Bible says God, to those that he loves, he rebukes. And so when one cannot be called out, when one cannot be rebuked or thingy, what ends up happening is that they wallow on in human passions. You just become a reflection of, it's my beer bottle, I bought it. It's my car, I bought it, so I can drink my beer in my car. And the combination of these areas of pride, it doesn't lead to maturity. It leads to destructiveness, because we live for human desires. We ought to be very careful with that. So it's just a thought that I had. I was going to do the Thabo Besta one individually, but then it passed. So I ended up not. But then I thought it was quite an interesting one for us to bring it here within this light. careful not to live towards human passions. Human passions are very destructive. They don't reflect God's will. We can easily stray if we follow that. It's Ricky. Tell me what you think down in the comment section, and I'll see you on a later on episode.